Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Thursday, October 24th, 2024. I've been doing a countdown of my favorite video games of all time through each day of the year, and coming in at number 69 is Batman Arkham Asylum. When I think of action combat games made by AAA game studios, for a long time I've made some general assumptions. First, it would be open world. Second, it would have tons of pointless little collectibles, which, for the record, I enjoy. Third, it would have been extremely fluid and responsive with its combat. And lastly, the story would be fun and serviceable to gameplay, but ultimately take little to no real risks and not feel very personable. Arkham Asylum, the first of Rocksteady Studios' many Batman games, is all of those things except one. I've already ranked Arkham Origins as my 149th favorite game, and I'll have some more Batman to talk about before the year is over, but there's one thing that Arkham Asylum did exceptionally well that put it above Origins, which is otherwise a cleaner, bigger, and realistically better game, as far as like controls and mechanics and things of that nature. Origins has more tools for combat, more stuff to do, more villains, more story, pretty much more everything. But you know what it doesn't have? Remarkable level design in a setting that feels like as much a character as the buff billionaire you are playing as. On the whole, I'm more of a Marvel person than DC. I like the power scaling more, I like the heroes more, and I appreciate that it's set in quote-unquote the real world. A lot of stakes and settings are just less interesting to me in DC stories because why should I care about Star City or Metropolis? As a character, I really like Barry Allen as the Flash. I love Clark Kent, but don't really care that much about Superman. Most of the Green Lanterns are pretty cool. That's about all I like about the heroes in DC. Even Batman, who is cool, don't get me wrong, is not a character I care about that much. But you know what I love about DC? The one thing DC Comics do outrageously better than Marvel? Street-level rogues galleries, especially Batman's. The city of Gotham is a character, and its locations have personality. And that translates extraordinarily well to this game, which is set entirely in the Arkham Asylum and the grounds surrounding it. You play as the Caped Crusader, who has just captured Joker, perhaps a little bit too easily. Joker is once again brilliantly voice acted by Mark Hamill, with Kevin Conroy, the only real Batman in my heart, playing the main dude. So you take Joker in, and there's a lot of elegantly done exposition here, just from kind of ambient dialogue and visual cues. This whole opening sequence is actually, I think, phenomenal, and a lot of what I'm talking about with the Asylum being a character on its own. There's a few things you pick up on right away. The Warden, a new character made specifically for these games, Quincy Sharp, is campaigning for the mayor's office. This has evidently been his goal since becoming Warden 3 years prior to the start of the game, and informed a lot of decisions that look good for his public image, but maybe not actually good for being, well, an insane asylum, housing some of the most murderous, violent people on the planet. 2. There's a huge amount of inmates that were just transferred in from another prison for holding. Many of these inmates, hundreds of them in fact, are detainees linked to Joker. 3. Joker has always been incomprehensible with his emotions, but he seems extra giddy about being back in Arkham. And you do also see a whole bunch of different villains and other characters that will pop up over the course of the game, just kind of moving about and talking and referential things. But with Joker, he's so excited because this is all, very predictably, a trap. Once you're firmly in the asylum, you get locked in as Harley Quinn abducts the warden, gains control of the security room, and Joker's inside man on Jim Gordon's team knocks out your best detective friend. The inmates are now running the asylum, as they say, but at least these inmates are like, cool. Alright, I guess I could talk about gameplay now. Combat in this game is very smooth and fluid. I've only ever played these games on PC, and I honestly cannot imagine doing it with a controller, though I know that's how a ton of people have experienced it. The combat is actually quite simple in structure, left-click punches, and oh man, do you punch a lot. Sometimes there will be a blue icon that appears above enemies that are about to attack you, and you can right-click within the rhythm and flow of your left clicks to counter their attack. Some attacks you can't counter, however, and those are indicated by a red icon. You can stun enemies with your cloak, clicking on the scroll wheel, and there's dodge mechanics, and, you know, a whole utility belt full of items. Most of your items aren't used in combat, they're more for the puzzly aspects of the game, but some definitely are. Some of what I'm saying here require upgrades you can pick up from when you level up, but you can use batarangs to stun people, or throw them mid-combat to help keep your combo alive as you're closing the gap. Your grappling hook can also pull people towards you, and if you're really smart about it, you can set up traps for people too, with things like your explosive gel. I mentioned a combo counter, and as you keep punching away, you're building up this counter of successive hits without getting hit yourself. If you stop attacking, it resets, or of course if you get hit, it resets. But what this counter does is the higher it goes, the faster you move, and the harder you punch. It can be really tempting to just furiously left click as fast as possible, but one of the combat upgrades is critical strikes that do more damage and give you faster combo building if you time your clicks a little slower to perfectly fit the pace of Batman's actual punches he's delivering and kicks and whatnot. The whole fighting system is extremely cinematic, and I will never grow tired of the slow motion knockout of the last enemy. However, Batman is far more than just a top-tier martial artist. He's also stealthy and the world's greatest detective. As fun as punching is, I also love the slower pace, hunter of the night sort of kills. Oh, excuse me, he doesn't kill. Near-death experiences that leave you tied up in a hospital like Squidward tentacles in the jellyfishing episode for months, while any health insurance you might have won't cover anything because there's a clause about non-payment for incidents involving criminal activity, leaving you financially ruined for the rest of your life, potentially creating a generational spiral towards poverty, crime, and anguish. I mean, really? Who's the villain here? Batman should just kill these people. It's for their own good. But yeah, you can hide out in grates, swing around on perches high up in the ceilings, plant remote detonation bombs, disable guns, and ultimately put the fear of God in these people. It's great. But the thing that Arkham Asylum does so insanely well is the non-combat parts of the game. Simply just exploring the grounds is phenomenal. There's lots of tight vents, other hidden away areas with destructible walls, high platforms, and you might think with all the stuff going on, how can Batman handle everything without being able to access the utilities of his Batcave? Well, it turns out he built one on the island for just such an inevitability, and you get to explore the grounds outside to find it. Throughout all of this poking and ziplining and crawling and going down the wrong corridors, you'll find stuff. I love finding stuff. The stuff in question can be quite a few different things, but for the most part, they're actually interesting. Riddler trophies are hidden items that generally don't do a whole lot, but they are fun to discover. The rest do things, though. There's interview tapes, which you can listen to as records of rehabilitation attempts with Gotham's seedy underbelly. There's these very weird stones with, like, glyphs or whatever on them, which contain the spirit of Amadeus Arkham, the founder of the asylum itself. That whole subplot, while not technically, like, important, was actually really interesting to me. But most importantly, there's all of these riddles from the Riddler, not just the trophies, but riddles themselves you have to solve for each area of the game. Basically, a clue will appear on your screen in the form of a riddle, and you have to decipher which specific item or scene that's cryptically describing, and then go and scan that with your detective mode. Most of the riddles are just a progress meter, really, for unlocking challenge modes, which are pretty much pre-canned scenarios and fights to test yourself for high scores, but some also unlock additional character information and more of those interview reels. The detective mode is one of the more overlooked parts of Batman's character in modern media, and I really enjoy it. Yes, it helps in combat, allowing you to see through walls and other important information, like weapons people have, but to progress through the story, you often have to solve something to figure out where to go next. Maybe it's following traces of alcohol on a guard's breath. Maybe you're tracking footprints. One such thing as following tobacco that Jim Gordon left behind is a trail to figure out where he was taken after being captured. As you keep looking, Batman discovers what he initially believes is Jim's dead body, but it's clear there's something going on. He's actually hallucinating because Scarecrow, one of my favorite Batman villains, deployed his nightmare gas. There's a few times you run into good old Jonathan Crane throughout the game, and they're really a highlight and are the most memorable fights to me in the whole game. As you continue to hallucinate, the world sort of falls apart around you, and you have to do these basically stealth platforming segments while avoiding Scarecrow's watchful gaze. This first one is pretty easy, but it's a ton of fun regardless. These qualities of your encounters with Scarecrow, while definitely unique, are in a way consistent with other villains. Each major antagonist you're running into has something about them that makes them fresh and different compared to everyone else. Like Bane's fights have you finding ways to compensate for the blind rage his venom puts him in order to flip the tables in what should otherwise be a fairly one-sided brawl, not in your favor. Bane's pretty important in this game, by the way, because it turns out Joker's plan this whole time was to create a super venom that would create an army of basically Banes at his command. It's pretty crazy, but obviously we saved the day in the end and it's fine. Relative to something like Arkham Origins, Asylum is a very tight, focused experience that moves at a much more intentional pace, with something exciting not just around any corner, but instead every corner. Even lacking some extra bells and whistles, I'd be more than happy to spend way more time just on this one island, fighting in tight hallways and crawling through cramped vents. Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 68th favorite game, where I also don't kill my enemies. I break them, tame them, or turn them normal again with a baseball bat.